Holding the body very still, we're going to practice shikantaza. Just precisely this. Simple, radical form of awareness practice. Whatever is arising in any of the areas of consciousness, the 5 sense fields and their objects, including the mind or the 6 consciousness, thoughts, emotions, memories, whatever is arising, please just observe those. If you can, do not make any comments or interpretations or judgments about what is arising. Keep it simple. Just receive it. Just observe. Just observe. Those of you in Zendo, please gather in front of the altar. Those of you on Zoom, please turn toward your computer screen. Thank you. This evening's Dharma talk is titled, You Are the Seer. You are the seer. You are the witness. You are that. We'll go into that a little bit further in a moment. But first of all, I'd like to thank those who participate in this Sangha, this spiritual community, both in person and online on Zoom. Thank you for that. We need this kind of support, the teacher, the teaching, and the community. If you start to separate those out, this does not work so well, is not quite so expedient. So thank you for your participation, and thank you for your support, both participatory and financial. Please continue to help us if you are able. So you are the seer. This teaching goes way back as pre-Buddhist. If you go back and read, which I'm not a scholar, but I have looked around a little bit. And if you look at, I think it's there's 108 spiritual teachings called Upanishads. I don't know what that word means, though I did at one time probably. But that's in ancient India, pre-Buddhist. It is the 10th one, the Brihadaranyaka. I might not be pronouncing that correctly. Upanishad actually talks about non-duality, or not two, or no self, no other, in a little bit different way than it is taught in the Buddha's Dharma, but it is there. This has been around a long time in other traditions, including indigenous peoples' traditions, spoken of and taught in different ways, just like in the Advaita Vedanta. Advaita or non-dual teachings are the basis of and some say, and there's some differentiation and difficulty, lack of agreement, shall we say, and how this, going back and doing the historicity of what that is about, how that showed up. So a Vedanta teacher who's passed away now, pretty well-known one by the name of Jean, I think it's pronounced Klein, who was born in Germany. And a great teacher. He has several books, but the one that I would recommend if you were interested would be called I Am, and a very powerful teaching. But it's you'll recognize a lot of this words that he's using are very similar to the way I teach this, because I'm teaching out of what I'm seeing, not exactly what I've been taught. And I've said this over and over again. I'm looking at this. So I don't need an authority to come and tell me what I'm teaching is correct. The way I know that what I'm teaching is correct is I'm looking at it. I don't even need any students. So, but if I didn't have any students, of course, I would not be teaching. But I would not stop receiving what I'm looking at. There just might not be anyone who's interested. And I would return to being a pickpocket, which I think I was in the 13th century. So Jean Klein, his just FYI, if you need the information, his teacher was Pundit Virag Havachar. He was and his last name was Rao. And he studied with him for a few years right after the Second World War, which Jean Klein was part of the resistance, I think, in France during that time. But Klein's teaching is very powerful. It talks about meditation a little bit, but mainly it talks about the relationship to the teacher, how important the teacher is. So you could check that out or not, do whatever you want. But when I say you are the seer, you are that. In the Advaita tradition, they would say you are the self, thinking of a higher, advanced kind of self rather than the ego, self-serving, greedy, warlike self of the ego. But you are a higher form of consciousness. So I would say you're consciousness. You just are consciousness. I wouldn't give it the somewhat a sticky word of the self, but you could if you like. So it's just what I'm emphasizing here. These teachings were there when the Buddha was born and when he studied with those Brahmins that were part of his father's kingdom in those ancient times. So it seems to be necessary in your sitting practice of meditation is to watch. This is the way I teach it, not the way Mr. Klein did. If you read any of his works, you'll see that he's doing it more by just encouraging you to relate to the teacher. In that case, him. He had as I said, he had a teacher in, excuse me, I think it was a Sanskrit scholar who helped him realize his true nature. I don't know much. I don't think there's much by way of a biography or autobiography there, but perhaps. So what am I saying? You can do this yourself. You can actually do it without Buddhism, but you might need that to give you a structure or some kind of guideline, because other than that, all you have is, you don't have the Sangha. You might have a spiritual community, but if you have a spiritual community with, say, someone like Nisargadatta Maharaj or Ramana Maharshi, it's very, it's pretty loose, and it isn't held together by vows that I know of. So I would say that's up to you. If you need that, it's here. If you don't need it, then do something else. The right and wrong are extra. We don't need that here. If you stand up right now and walk out of here and never come back, you've not done anything wrong. And if you stay in here for the rest of your life and practice meditation, you've not done anything right. Those are extra. You don't need those. What is true is not divided. And what is true, untrue has all kinds of nooks and crannies. Has to be done with the awareness. And that can show up in any of the sense fields, including the mind. The mind is a receiver of thoughts. It does not produce thoughts. If you think it does, spinning. You'll continue to spin and you'll continue to generate those. Very complicated from the point of view of trying to figure out what it is and control it and make sure it doesn't do this. It gets more of that, even though Buddhism is full of all kinds of contraptions. And I say that with respect on how to stop the negativity or slow it down or redirect it or transmute it into loving kindness and so on. It's all over the place. And we're all doing that. And we participate in that here. We chant mantras that are talking about working with it in that way. Why is that? Because some people need that kind of support and help. And you know who you are. Others don't need that. Others might need to go into retreat and go to a mountaintop somewhere and never come back, or go into retreat for long periods of time, or go into retreat right here, sit down, hold still, observe the wall. That you are in a natural retreat hut as soon as you sit down and hold still and don't do anything but watch the movement of the mind stream. You're in retreat, whether it's for 10 minutes or 10 days. I highly recommend both. So you are, if your identity is anything, you are the seer, you are the witnessing, you are the observer. You can use all those words. You're just observing. It's just that there's no solid identity there that is looking for results or looking for who's right, who's wrong. There's just the receiving part of the consciousness only. If you say perception only, as it says in the banner in the back, that's more path quality. You're using the perception and slowing things down. So you're just looking at the perception and you are endeavoring to enter into that state of consciousness. It's not actually a state. I'm just saying that expediently. But it is consciousness where there's no observing part of the consciousness, and there's nothing being observed part of the consciousness. So this is the way that in which you can transcend this world without your feet leaving the ground. Can this be done? Yes. Is it something you do? Somewhat. It's more of something you stop doing and start just receiving instead of producing all these footprints in the snow. You don't need them. They only last for a little while anyway. Even if you become famous, not a good idea. Become famous. I don't think Shoho Mike, the person who was my preceptor, would mind me sharing that one time his teacher and my teacher, Kobanchino Roshi, once told him to, if you know Shoho or Mike, he's an incredible painter. I met him at the Art Institute when I was 22 and I think he was 18. So I was like an old man, but he's an astonishingly gifted artist, painter. And Koban told him to stop exhibiting, don't exhibit, and just be a Sunday painter. It was kind of heartbreaking for Shoho. Shoho did not mind him. He kept exhibiting. He did not, you might, if we were to talk to him, he's not here, and I don't think he watches any of my talks, but if he were here, he might say something else about it that I don't recall. Also, he wouldn't marry who Koban wanted him to marry either. So Shoho was kind of stubborn. Can't go on and on in that area, but I will not. So back to the seer. What is the witnessing quality of the consciousness? The next time you have some kind of ragtag ideas coming through and ripping at your heartstrings or hurting you, causing you pain, causing you what we might call anxiety, depression, or anger, or any of those, see if you can see or understand the witnessing area of the consciousness rather than that which is dumped on top of that by fear, dumped on top of that by hope for something better, or modified or converted into something else by the way the consciousness works when it's operating out of not being a receiver. It wants to produce success, and it wants to be recognized for all the hard work it's done meditating. I just recently criticized somebody, and they said back to me, well, how about all the times I'm not doing that? Who was that? How about all the times that I'm actually not hooking up my vocal cords and I'm just receiving whatever's happening? Credentials. So watch your step in that area. It's not about stopping that. The awareness of any kind of negativity, passion, aggression, and ignorance is, just to speak about it very directly, the value there of the sitting practice of meditation is you're actually experiencing samsara directly without fixing it, without increasing it, and without shutting down on it. You're actually liberating yourself right in the midst of the hell realm, or the jealous God realm, or the human realm, or the animal realm, or any realm, formless realm, realm of form, anything you can call an area. You're in that, and you're not going to push on it, you're not going to pull on it, and you're not going to shut it down. This can take the rest of your life to do this. And even then, there's no guarantee. You might have to come back 3 more lifetimes, but start now. Start now and start, have that momentum to see what this is. Make a pact with yourself. If you can't make an agreement with your teacher, do it with yourself. If you can't make it with the Dharma, do it with yourself. If you can't do it with the Sangha, then you do it. It's going to be very difficult to do that just with yourself, because the ego is very, very sneaky, and it will provide proof that you are on the spiritual path. Don't bullshit yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm not here to sales pitch that I'm this amazing teacher. You should come and drop to my feet. But you might want to drop to somebody's feet, because you can't do this by yourself. Why? There isn't one. And according to Jean Klein, who was not a Buddhist, who was just an Advaita teacher, non-dual teacher, you need a teacher to point at this, because if you can't do it yourself, because you can't get an authority out of otherness. The authority has to come out of seeing there isn't anyone, and you have to meet someone who knows that. I'm not here marketing myself. You'll know if this is your teacher. If you have any doubts about it, get out of here. Leave. You think I'm kidding you? I'm not kidding you. Leave. Go do something else. I'll go home and take a nap. And why am I saying that so definitely and so abruptly? I want you to look at it closely. I want this to be the truth for you, not some bullshit that you believe in. This is not the cult. Although sometimes somebody looking at it might think, oh, they're prostrating and they're chanting and when this teacher gets up and walks out, they're bowing to the teacher, and some kind of obeisance going on, or some kind of following going on. You can't follow me. I'm not going anywhere. Any of you who are close to me know that nothing's happening over here other than your mind. So again, I say leave. But at the same time, I'm saying, don't stay here. Do it anyway. Do it anyway. Not for me, but for yourself. Do it for yourself. Live your life in a completely direct, uplifted, genuine, sincere, and sane way. Make no demands on anything. Don't demand that anything that's happening, receive it. If it's negativity, receive. If it's positivity, receive. If it's neutral, receive. Receive, receive, receive. Is there a question? Sanho.
For those of us who don't connect much with forms, we connect more with sitting and with interviews. What is the teaching around us doing forms anyway?
So it's different with each person, but and the way you or anyone else connects with forms is going to be unlike 3 or 4 other people, and quite a bit like this person or that person. Lots of variable there. The idea is to use the form, which gives you some kind of a structure to something that is very much going this way and that way. The mind stream is fluctuating this way and that way, and you have the form so you can see more closely the insubstantiality of the mind stream, and that there's no solid center, nor is there any fringe. So if you have a form, which might be striking the gong every morning, like the Han and Bell practice that some people come and do, leading the chants. The chants are just reminders of how this has been taught down through the centuries. We repeat it over and over again. So I would say just continue to do that. You don't have to get engorged with it. You don't have to. It's not a monastery where you're forced to do certain forms, but it's recommended. People that live here, there's no standard to live up to. That being said, if somebody doesn't comply, you could say, to some extent, we give people If you live here, you know that anybody who lives here is given a lot of leeway or room to be genuine, be who they are. We want to help people here, not just have some kind of a military. I know what it's like to be in a military and just follow orders. Not a good idea, not a good way of working with people. That's about controlling people. I'm not interested in controlling you. I'm about helping you see through your neurosis and see who you fundamentally are. So you stop going to war with everybody, with your own mind to start with. Just stop fighting with yourself. And when you stop fighting with yourself, all the demons you've been kind of pushing away start to crawl right up the walls of your mind. If they don't, well, give it a few years, because they will, more than likely. So I'm saying those forms that you're asking about, what have you lived here a year now?
7 months.
7 months. So have a few years left. Just continue to go. And you'll notice that everybody here, that is the functionaries work with you wherever you're at with the forms. And I think you're quite good. I'm not here to compliment you on anything. I think you participate quite a bit in this community already. At least I would say so. And I think others would too. Did I miss what you're asking about? Okay. So there's nothing to correct. You're doing what you need to do. And as you go along, you may slowly find a different understanding of what the forms are. It takes quite a while. Certainly did for me. Decades. Yes, sir.
Jeez, what are you pointing at with "You Are the Seer"?
You're seeing it. Seer means to see. The consciousness is seeing it. But you have to actually see it. What you're seeing, it's a way of talking about consciousness only. Well, I'm using a tradition that goes back way past before the Buddha showed up, back in the 7th to 8th century before the Common Era.
Jeez, what feels like it isn't seen, or what's covering that up?
What feels like it isn't seen or is covering that up? Just ignorance, just fear covers that up. You become afraid, and that fear doesn't necessarily show up as someone who's afraid. It can show up as anger. Fear is a pretty vulnerable area, so that might be something you're going to have to go into. But you might start out with just getting angry because something is coming in, making you feel more sensitive. So you start to just get what they used to say years ago, tight jaws. Mad. Passion, aggression, and ignorance are quite workable, but fear is not so workable. So we cover those up with success, failure, right and wrong, pointing, accusing. You know about all this. Everyone here does. But to actually experience the raw fear of being threatened by your own mind stream, not comfortable. This is a place that you can do that. It's a safe, protected place, as protected as we can get, where you can come in and dedicate your life to finding out your fundamental identity. That's what I'm here to do for you, or for anyone who will give me permission to do this. More?
Jeez, is ego fear?
Yes. It's just as Trungpa Rinpoche, I have to quote him, he calls it a paranoid insurance policy. It's just you have the ego so you don't have to experience the fear, because you always can go in your identity, your artificial identity, not the seer. The seer is just witnessing. It's just raw, bare attention to everything. And even that, you have to practice it, because the addition of me, myself, and I, and what I want, what I don't like, keeps showing up in front of it. So you have to look at it, look at it, look at it, look at it. You have to wear it out. You just have to wear out the insistence of the samsara that keeps expressing itself as a Coney Island of the mind, or some kind of a 3-ring circus, or a tilt-a-whirl, something that looks like it's going in a straight line, but it's actually going in circles more. Hi. Andy, go ahead.
Andy Bowing, are you able to see the full contours or outlines of the ego?
Yes. Yes, you can. You eventually see what it is, and you see that it's unreal. And at the same time, you see yours right in that same area, you start to see others. You see the way others are protecting themselves with a shield of identity, that they believe they are this certain person. Sometimes it even shows up really obviously, like someone, you'll be in a conversation and someone will actually say, well, I've always been the kind of person that, doesn't really do this or this or this. They'll actually describe themselves. They'll split off into parts describing the other part of themselves without really realizing what they're doing. That are participating in the illusion as if there's someone there and someone over there. But yes, you will eventually see it. But it won't last. If you try to do it, if you try to get rid of it, it gets stronger. If you try to see it and actually get that into the rear view mirror somehow, it gets stronger. Try to run away from it, gets stronger. But it won't always show up as fear. It might show up just as anger, rage, just being enraged that someone else, something else, some other thing, something happened to you. It can show up with each person in different ways. A lot depending on the karma that you showed up in this realm. This is the human realm, supposedly. What got you into this, what good fortune, bad fortune, causes and conditions that show up as so-called in the past. More?
Andy Bowing, it just feels so amorphous.
Yes.
When you said tricky, I guess it's just hard to see what we're looking for.
What you're what?
What I'm looking for.
You don't have to look for, just look at. If you look at, then whatever shows up that's it. That's your object of meditation. You've heard me say this many times. Sit down, hold still, as still as you can, and whatever shows up in your personal, particular mind stream is your object of meditation. Don't push it, don't pull on it, and don't ignore it. And it will taunt you with all of those different kinds of seductions. Something you should push on, something you shouldn't put up with, like in the form of a story. Then we'll lay a story on top of a story to insulate ourselves even more from the actual reality behind the whole thing, which is you're not a separate being from anyone. You have to realize that. You can't think your way into it. And it would be quite challenging, especially for someone with your particular skill, being an attorney. You're used to using all of this material and working it this way and that way with a reliance on laws, and where the laws are a little spongy and where the laws are cement, concrete, that kind of thing. When you say, I'm using a little bit of an image there, but it's that you're used to working with that to generate a livelihood, as is Sano and other people that are working in other areas that use a strong thinking process, a really powerful way to be able to work with those abstractions. So what you're being taught here is to just observe whatever shows up, do nothing with it. Don't add, subtract, or divide. So you're going to have quite a few things that you're going to look at that you won't reinforce. But when you get off the cushion, you might go right back into reinforcing that or using that particular chemistry set to get results in the field that is your profession. More?
I lost it. Thank you.
When you're bowing,
Yes.
I think one of the responses you gave to Sandho was something about using the form to see the insubstantiality of the mind stream.
Yes.
How does the structure or the form show us?
How does what?
How does the form show us the insubstantiality of the mind stream?
Anytime you watch something there, it starts to come apart. And then the ego mind will either fix it, make excuses for it, run a roundabout around it to try to make some kind of a idea about that, which makes it real. Your particular style is to tell us you have the first story, which is not particularly true, but might have some relative truth to it. And then you'll lay one story on top of the other. So you don't even have to look at the original trigger, which was just a trigger. It wasn't anything, nothing was happening there other than this triggered that, and that which was triggered is some kind of polarity on how you're not getting what you should get. You're losing control of what you should have control of. And then you'll lay more stories on that so that you don't have to look at it deeply. More?
When you're bowing, I think I was interpreting the word form in as like the forms that we do here.
Okay,
So how do these forms that we do day after day after day show the insubstantiality of the mind stream? Tell me.
well, you've been doing sitting meditation, that has to do with holding the body very still, hold everything you can still. That includes the mind, but there's not, what happens there is you notice that when you hold the body very still, you see the mind just doesn't have any solid handles or reference points in it. And if it does, if something that comes up there, usually it's in terms of difficulty or failure or lack of what is commonly called self-esteem. Like you feel like, or embarrassment. We've talked a little bit about, you get embarrassed about because of pride. You're starting to show up to others like you're not doing so well because of this, because of that. Those are all lies. There is no self in this this form. Feeling, perception, concept, and consciousness is a way of talking about the appearance of a human form, but those do not add up to those five heaps or skandhas don't hang on to hands and create some kind of solid separate being. You start to look into that, which you're doing by practicing meditation, by studying these teachings, as you're looking at the insubstantiality of those forms. They're empty of what you think they are. Traditional teaching out of the Mahayana. More.
In your mind, how does the body show the insubstantiality of the mind stream?
Body looks pretty substantial, doesn't it? When you're here, you can sit this way, you can sit this way. You have a lot of say-so about the body. Tremendous amount compared to the mind. You can't really do anything with the mind. But yet it looks like you're doing something with the mind when you're thinking about this, thinking about that, analyzing that. Like the sculptor Rodin's thinker. This is the mudra of the West, and this is the mudra of the East. This is why you have powerful transcendent spiritual teachings in the East. Why? I don't know. I don't know what the structure of that karma is. But over here in the West, we're trying to figure things out, calculate them. More. So the form gives you a shape. Sit down, hold still, sit symmetrical, so you can watch the asymmetry of the mind, because the mind's asymmetry or lack of reference point or lack for center and fringe won't show up right away. It will take a while for you to see that. There are some teachings that actually help you to visualize, in the Tibetan tradition, visualize a yantra, which is a mandala. You actually look at something in the mind that is symmetrical and then work with that in a certain way. Same thing with looking at visualizing a deity yoga, it's called in the tantric tradition. You may need to do that. I don't teach it directly. I think you can just look at the mind, even though I've studied that. Yes, sir.
Yoga bowing. Question on YouTube from Zeb. Zeb bowing. Should one block out physical pain that can't be helped?
Well, that's a pretty broad situation. I would say no. You have physical pain and you can take care of it. There's medication. I mean, some of the medications have some really bad. Oh, I don't need to tell you that. No, don't maintain. Return. If you sit down and your body starts to hurt, I'm sure you've even heard me say this before, Zeb. Go lay down. Go take a nap. I mean, set your alarm. Get back up and come back. Return to it. Return. You don't have to maintain, but you need, if you're on the spiritual path, the way I'm endeavoring to point this out, you need to return. Just to tell a story, you're sitting here and you come in and you sit down and it's 8 o'clock. Time to sit. And you're sitting there for 25 minutes and you start to ache. Do not stay there. This is not a macho delivery service. Get up and leave. Do it through the form. Go in and go lay down for 20 minutes, a half an hour, or maybe the rest of the day. Take care of yourself. I don't know what it's like to be in your body-mind complex, but you do. Be respectful of that. And also return to the teachings. Even if all you can do for a while is just read about it. Do the best you can. Zeb, I know you don't think you're very young, but I think you are. So you have a lot of time left, hopefully, unless the world comes to an end, which it might. Sanho.
thought about, and you began to answer, and I was just wondering, for people like me, I have a pinched nerve in my back. If I don't sit with my back against something, then it puts weight on the nerve, but if I put my back against something, it puts weight on the nerve.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what about someone who, there's a chronic reason why we basically need to lie down, and then maybe we even fall asleep? Is that, what is that?
Did I say anything? Michelle, that is not that funny. Well, maybe it is. So the reason I'm saying that is I'm starting to talk out of both sides of my ears. So, and ears don't produce sounds, but sometimes we think they do. And I've had some chronic back pain, which, thanks to Dr. Kinzel, I do not now. He actually did something and removed a synovial, removed the pain of a synovial cyst in my L4 vertebrae, which was horrible. A few of you were around and you could see it was very disconcerting to be able to lay in a recliner, and even that was horribly painful. And all I did was scream, didn't I? I mean, I didn't do it for hours and hours, but probably an hour. When it would attack me, it was horrible. And somehow I managed to get in here and sit down, give a Dharma talk, and then go in the other room and scream for a while. So that doesn't mean I'm this big, brave, muscular person who can sit here. No, it'll actually back off because I don't know, maybe it's because I was teaching. I have no idea. I have no idea. But I would say take care of yourself. I would not sit up here if I was in excruciating pain. I would excuse myself and leave. And you can do the same thing. The important thing is the awareness of what's happening, not our control over it. Your body, my body, your body is you want to say it in a very direct way, it's kind of on loan. It is the shape of consciousness takes for what, 60, 70 years, whatever the time is. It takes this particular shape. Be respectful to the body. That which is arising in your mind stream and your back is supposed to be there. It's there. It's causes and conditions. It's not that you can't find some way of maybe avoiding some of the pain. I did with Dr. Kinzel. He did some manipulations, and he's a DO also. So did he do that, or was it just coincident? Was that getting ready to go away and I'm giving him credit? It doesn't matter. So I would say take care of yourself. Be here as much as you can, but also if you need to lay down or if there's something we can do in here to help with your back situation, another kind of a chair or another, have you tried a Seiza bench before?
No.
You know what a Seiza bench is? Yeah. So I'm saying, not saying you should, I'm just saying you could experiment a little bit and see if there's another way of working with it. You can also just get up and go to the White Tower room and sit in an easy chair in there and then come back. But return is the important part. Further questions? Yes.
Being bowing. I spend hours a week looking at what I believe is my mind. And it feels as if that mind is more intrusive off the cushion.
Yes.
How can I put others first when it just looks like more intrusiveness of my own?
You're going to have to witness the way your selfishness. You're going to have to witness how it's all about me, me, me. If you're ready to hear that from me, then that's what I'm telling you. As I understand your question, it's not about so much about trying to be a really nice, helpful person. Don't bullshit yourself. Don't turn away from your emotions, your feelings. These are dependent livers, and they will look for a self who feels that way. And this is what you're working with. You're working with slowly understanding over time that there is no solid being there by the name of Yoon or Jesse. There's no solid being there. There's consciousness there that takes on that form in order to defend yourself, promote yourself, get your way, control others, control yourself. Unreal. You have to see that, and the path leading to that, seeing that is difficult. It's like climbing a mountain, or maybe worse. So you need to talk to somebody that has been up and down that mountain. And presumably that's what you're doing. There's nothing to fix, but there's a lot to see. So continue to do that. The downside of what you're dealing with is it's painful and it's challenging and it's embarrassing perhaps, to see that you're full of yourself. And you're all about me, and controlling yourself and getting your way. Am I going too far here? Just look at it. You do not have to fix any of that. Fixing it just creates a strong ego that's improving and getting better. This is a misunderstanding. And there are people that teach this differently. And if you feel that you want to listen to them, go listen to them. So, but I'm saying you need to see it. If you see what it is, you can liberate yourself from this wheel called samsara. You may return in another form and you may not. But whatever happens is what really needs to happen next in terms of your awareness. More. Thank you for the question.
玉红报应
Young,
is it ignorance to use spirituality? Sorry, 玉红报应 is that ignorance to use spirituality to work with loss of possessions? 报应
is it ignorance to use spirituality?
Yes. For example, this practice to deal with or to work with loss of possessions. 报应
You know, I think I follow you what your question is, but it's so complicated. Rather than jump to a conclusion about what it is it ignorance? Just work with it where it's at, where you're not really sure what it is. Then then the possibilities are completely endless possibilities, because you don't have a full cup, as the ancient Zen teachings of, if you come into the teacher with a full cup, there's no room for the teachings to go in. There has to be some kind of openness, some kind of emptiness, probably starting right here. Some kind of softness. Doesn't mean you're no longer afraid, but some kind of openness where you can actually understand more deeply the very nature of the spiritual path yourself. I wouldn't call it avoidance. Talking to you, as far as I know, I'm still your teacher. You asked me once to function that way, and that's what I'm doing right now. And I would say you're fine. What needs to happen is more sitting and more connection with the three jewels as much as you can. But that is without abandoning your children or your family, all that. You don't have to go to a mountaintop. Now that we have Zoom, we can all get together on Zoom or get together in the monastery and support each other, reinforce this practice for each other as a spiritual community, as a sangha. Quite often that's missed in other areas. They might show up as spiritual community for 2 weeks or for a retreat or something, and then they're not even allowed to talk to each other. This is a mistake. People need to talk to each other, not run around practicing noble silence. It's not very noble. It's very discourteous, I think. And that's not my opinion.
玉红报应 I
Yes.
think when I asked the question, when you answered, I realized that I did ignore the grave of loss, no matter what, what type, instead of looking at how it's shown up in my body.
It's awareness. It's about awareness. It's not about success, not about being caught with an ignorance. It's not about being totally aggressive. It's about awareness of what you're doing. It's the awareness. It's not the control. You don't have to come back and have some kind of artificial discipline based on the uniform code of military justice, where everybody has to obey the law or they get thrown out of the monastery or thrown out of the teaching. So do it with awareness so you see it. We do this together. It's a very mutual situation. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shoto.
Shoto bowing. Earlier, I think in response to Sanho's questioning, the idea of like residents aren't required to do anything.
They aren't?
What I thought that's what you said.
Well, what are they required to do?
I don't know. My question was like in the hallway, the forms, it says the mandatory forms for the practice resident.
How do you spell mandatory?
MANDATORY.
Did you write that?
No,
Who did it?
I don't know.
Go ahead.
What is it? Why use the word mandatory if we're not required to do it?
Because we want you to. It shows up in the form that we have to say, you need, if you're gonna live in this monastery, you need to do this way. But we just had a person leave not too long ago who could not do this. I'm not saying they didn't try, but they had a lot of room to do the best they could, as you know, and I'm not gonna go into his history of anything like that, but people just, we need to observe the forms. There's not anything to obey here, but have to do that to some extent. And everyone here is doing that in a different way, different kind of working with this, as you know. And so mandatory, can you tell me 2 or 3 of them? By
Yeah, something like wear sunways if you're in the Zendo, unless it's really hot, then wear black.
okay,
Things like.
So- but if it's really hot, you can wear a black t-shirt, can't you? That's been done. So what's the problem with that? Is it,
It's just the word mandatory is really confusing.
what would you use? Manipulative? Yeah, it's an M word. Meditative. Use that word. Is there another word, really? Your choice. You know, then what do we do when Kayun comes? Is Kayun here? Kayun, the word name Kayun means what? Painted cloud. And Kayun is quite dapper. Whereas flowered ascots and so on with the black. Have you noticed that? Have you noticed he has rainbow socks? Okay, so how mandatory is that? Is anyone jumping on him about that? Have you ever corrected him? It's mandatory. Why the hell didn't you correct him? Aren't you a monk? Why didn't you correct him?
You told me, I actually asked you about that and said, who's gonna argue with a painted cloud?
Yeah, you ever tried to argue with any cloud, let alone a painted one? We used to have a person that had a lot of hats. All first came here with the same time Sokuzan came here a long time ago. They came together and I named him. He wouldn't stay around. He wasn't that interested in this teaching, but he was an interesting fellow. That quite, and I called him Kaizen, Painted Mountain, and he was quite decorated. But right or wrong is actually, we need to find it some way. We need to make it so that it respects people's. Some people need to do things a certain way. So I think if Kayun lived here, instead of just visiting for a few weeks or something, I might talk to him. And I'm not sure if he's here right now. Kayun, are you here? Let's see. Let's see. I don't see him. So good, well, we can keep talking about it. So it's, like that, it's kind of funny, you, like I said, arguing with a painted cloud, it's like, it has to be kind of open-ended. You need the form, and then you see how, well, in this one area, it's not time to tighten that up. So we be respectful of people's, if someone is here, that takes a lot of sincerity, even come here and live, let alone to stay here year after year when some things are driving you crazy. But he hasn't stayed here long enough for something to drive him crazy. But he lives in New York, so you can get plenty of that right in New York. More about that if you have it, and I'll try to respond to it in as clear a way as I can.
Just that I had asked you not to keep going into this specific situation, but to just drop that because I retyped that list and I got the feedback to know we should keep that word mandatory.
So I told you to drop it.
No, I asked about it and you told me to keep it.
Well, I did tell you to keep it, yeah. So, okay, well, I guess I told you what to do, didn't I? So it's mandatory. But, it's still, look who you're talking to. I mean, since I'm the abbot here, or the so-called authority, I can change this around. I can say we have to knock all the windows out. Not enough air in here. Yeah, but Sokuzan, there'll be broken glass all over the place. Well, they'll be, just put it on the summer list. Well, how about all the cold air coming in? I said, bundle up. Just make sure you wear black. I mean, I can go on and on and on with this. We'd all have a good time. Have you ever seen me pick up a coffee cup and throw it at you? Oh, I said, I couldn't remember. That's just teaching it. It's coming yet. Won't be long. So what am I saying here? I'm not trying to be stupid or crazy or silly or even ridiculous. I'm just saying that the teaching comes out of the forms. So we need the forms. Like when you was asking, we need the forms. We chant the Heart Sutra. We chant the Samji Nirvachana. No, we don't chant that. We read that and study that. We study the or chant the well, now we chant the 30 verses of Asabandhu, which we kind of invented that along with the help from Chisho and from Yinlong and other people. We're able to make that into a chant, a form. And so the form gets you something we can all do together. We kind of agree on that based on what the teaching person is saying. Let's do this. Let's chant this. And then you watch the way the mind, especially the self-centered mind, it becomes more clear the way in which you're greedy, the way in which you grasp passion, the way in which you reject aggression, and the way in which you shut down or ignore or turn away from things to distract yourself from the truth. It's about awareness, 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 not necessarily about following the forms or obeying. It's about observing. Even Kobin said, with the 16 precepts, you don't take precepts, you observe them. And a lot of that observing is seeing how you cannot stop lying. You're always padding something on, you're changing, you're not quite able to just say what is true. You look back on something you just said to somebody, you realize you didn't really level with them on that. You sidestepped it because what? You didn't want to hurt their feelings. You all know what I'm talking about. And the other one be not that you didn't want to hurt their feelings. You did not want to be a person who showed up as someone who was obstinate or disagreeable, or you could go on and on because there's so many different ways of the three poisons show up to keep us from what? Being right here with this in a genuine, sincere, and direct way. Any questions on Zoom? I can't see all of you there since you have your names up, but if you just speak up, I will endeavor to respond to questions.
Yuhong Baoing.
Go on.
I have a follow-up question about Shoto's asking. So at the monastery, you just mentioned that there are certain things are required and mandatory and off cushion during our workplace, for example, in the classroom. So it's easy black and white. If this is the rule, the students follow the rule. How can I look at that with maybe with some practice on this path? Bye.
I think it's a very good question, and you might just pick out something. Maybe make a list of all the rules that are there, and then see if there is one there that is more sensitive or softer in terms of being interpreted differently, depending on the individual or the person. So you could contemplate that yourself, just based on the way you're asking me. I think there's already probably some kind of sensitivity to something that doesn't need to be nailed down. So we apply a standard every time instead of looking at the individuality. This was I experienced this when I was very young in school, how you have to live up to a certain standard or else you don't pass. So people are disrespected. Everyone here has a different way of learning, of educating themselves, whether it's the linear way or the all over the place way. No center, no fringe. Holistic, sometimes it's called. And quite often that's just not respected because you can't get control of people if you kind of let them learn in their own way. You need to control them and have everybody learn the same way. Everyone takes the same test. We have a standard. So it is a highly sophisticated form of stupidity that is doing that. This doesn't mean that some people won't rise to the top of class. It's because they're have a natural ability to remember really just about everything, and a natural ability to apply that in different ways that makes them look superior to everybody. And I'm not saying they're not superior, they really are, but it leaves out a whole lot of other ways that people function in maybe a more holistic, or even, you could even say, humanistic way of having great respect for others, great respect for the variable. This is why you have bullies on the playground. Power, power, power. It's because it's taught. You heard of the war on drugs? That showed up, what, in the 1972 or something like that? Not a good way to work with something that is an addiction, to make war on it. Not a good idea to make war on anything. Not a good idea to make peace with anything, because usually that's just a cover up for wanting to control. I know it sounds like I'm about ready to get on my soapbox, doesn't it? I'm not going to do that. Is there a final question before we? Yes, sir.
Milk bowing. Question on YouTube from Thomas in the UK.
Yes, sir.
If time does not remain constant, what does it remain?
Time.
Time.
It's just an abstraction. It's abstract. That's why we have to have a clock. It goes in circles like this, unless you have a digital clock, which makes it even more abstract. And then you can look at a digital clock and not really know what time it is. But you could look at an analog clock and still not know what time it is. That's because it's not real.
Milk bowing. He has another question.
I bet he does.
Firewood is not ash. What is ash?
Firewood. Dogans, koan, firewood does not become ash.
Milk bowing. He's gone on a little further.
He has.
All
right.
Thomas asks,
Bring it.
why will ash be blown by winds easier than a tree?
Because it's not as heavy. Unless you have 500 tons of, well, let me put it to you this way. What's heavier, a ton of feathers or a ton of logs? It's the same thing. It's abstractions out of it. It just makes it impossible to compare anything or to even figure anything out unless you're trying to get an advantage on something or somebody, manipulate people or ideas, propaganda. That usually operates out of fear. If there's no fear, you're not going to control somebody that has transcended fear. I can take one more if there is one, especially in here. You know.
About whenever you talk about the forms being soft and not being macho, I crave that. Is that just a form of hiding?
Sure. But also, these forms in here are quite movable, but yet they're here. They're very, the structure is very strong. So if you wanted to come in here and follow these forms, for instance, the next month, this is 8 hours a day for 29 days. It's very, very strong, but you have to be the one. There's no one standing here with a stick, unless it's me, which I might. But go ahead. Yeah, further.
Yeah, but if I'm trying to create new forms for myself back at Hidden Mountain,
Yeah.
is it unskillful to try to adhere to them strictly? Should I
Oh,
try to
no.
force myself to be
No,
loose?
no. You know, you should trust yourself. You know what you need to do for yourself. It just might take you a lot longer to do that on your own than if you turn it over to a teacher and then he or she or they tell you what to do. This is your form. I have people that are fully ordained monks that I don't get complete permission from. And I know it, and I'm not sure if they know it or not. Permission to shake my finger at them. You know that. Oh, yeah. Did I ever shake my finger at you? I think I'm following what you're saying. We could talk at some point in private on that if you wanted to look into that. But I think it's with anybody, especially somebody who's off in the distance, like people are on Zoom I've never met. Set up your forums. Just notice how you set up a forum. You could say every morning at 7 o'clock, I sit for 1 hour and I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And maybe I prostrate, or maybe I just bow to an altar. Maybe there's an image of a Buddha. Maybe there's a Dharma book sitting on. Maybe there isn't anything there. Maybe there's just a candle. Maybe nothing. Maybe offer incense. Maybe not. But have some kind of point of reference where you do something with your mind stream. It's up to you how to do that. That being said, if you go too far out, then the whole ego mind starts to take over. And the next thing you know, you think you're a guru. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Bowing, what is the function on the path of giving you full permission as our teacher?
You just receive the teaching. You receive it. So that the teacher can introduce you to what this is, because this is the teacher. I'm just a student of this. But since I'm a student of everything here, including you, including your question, I'm able to teach out of it. If I have a student. So what is the function of what?
Giving you permission as a teacher.
It's just that. Go ahead.
Mr. Bowing, what's the impact on the path of not giving you full permission as a teacher?
You tend to interpret the whole thing yourself. And I did this for many years with both of my teachers.
Mr. Bowing, how does interpreting it ourselves keep us from seeing what this is?
If the interpretation has some kind of understanding there, if you're looking at it, you're seeing, for instance, you look at this and you begin to see that what you're looking at is your mind. So you're the one that's going to have to see that. This teacher can't do that for you, but the teacher might say to you, what you're looking at, you are. You've heard me say that. When you look at the wall, when you look at your worst fears, when you look at your biggest celebration of succeeding at something, it's your mind. It is the mind. It needs to be seen. Not something that you can particularly think about more.
Mr. Bowing, what's the difference between what I'm looking at being my mind and my interpretation being the truth?
I don't know, it's pretty complicated. So in other words, your interpretation being the truth to you, it's an interpretation. So it's not the truth. It's your idea about what's in front of you. But you might have to look at your idea, what's in front of you, but you don't push it. You don't pull on it, and you don't shut down. You don't do anything with that. You just continue to receive that. And very difficult to do that unless there's some kind of a training period.
Mr. Bowing, do we need the teacher to help us see the difference between what we're seeing and what we think about it?
Well, I certainly did. I think it's important to have a teacher. Without the teacher, and the relationship to the teacher is different for everyone.
Mr. Bowing, do we have to begin to doubt our thoughts, our own thinking process before we can give you full permission?
But there's probably going to be some of that. But it doesn't mean that you're going into some kind of a stupor where you can't even think anymore because there's so many doubts. But a little bit of that. It's the chemistry between you and the teacher, and the chemistry between you and the teaching that you're studying and the chemistry between you and the community that you're in. Other people that are also practicing that had the same teacher. Seems to be pretty important. This is why you receive vows. This is why you return to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the teacher, for refuge or for support, so that you can continue more. So one last thing I'll say, it probably will never make any sense to you. Even if you realize your true nature, you won't be able to go back and figure out or find out how that even occurred. Because what happens is you just stop covering it up. And so then that's why it's sometimes called grace. You didn't do it, you didn't create it, you just stopped covering up your true nature. You saw that you are this. You are there's anything that is not you, the personal person, not even you, the witness, because even the witness comes apart. Even the seer comes apart, even the consciousness. But we have to start somewhere. So we start with that, walking up that mountain.
Yuhong bowing. If we
Okay.
do as what you are teaching us, what made us to return? What made us return to you again and again? Bowing.
I don't know, probably because you're a fool.
Is that because I did not do exactly as what you're teaching me? Bowing.
Probably hit on something there. All the teacher can do is point at it or talk about it, and then it is up to you to practice and see it for yourself. As was talked about earlier, you are what you're looking for. You just discover your true nature, and it is not separate from anything else. It's consciousness only. Simple way of putting it, but you have to see it. If you see it, it will not necessarily be an experience. Experiences come and go, as I've sometimes pointed out this way. Here's an experience, gone. And realization is like this. Hasn't
Thank
gone.
you.
You're welcome. Oh, okay, my friends. Thank you so much.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jio san chi shifu, shi song bu sa moko sa, moko jahoro mi. The 10 directions of 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita.
We'll return to sitting. We'll start evening service at 7:40.